Jonestown's Massacre. My essential question is, as a cult leader, how did Jim Jones influence and control the people of Jonestown psychologically? Jim Jones was the leader of the People's Temple. He was able to gain the influence of people from all around the world. How did he do it? He had a cult of personality. This term might ring a bell. If you guys remember, Miss Mew talked about this term a few weeks back with Hitler. He also had a cult of personality. A cult of personality refers to the massive praise or admiration towards a political or historical figure. He or she utilizes mass media, propaganda, or other methods to create an idealized, heroic, or at times a godlike image. Jim Jones achieved this reputation through performing many remarkable healings which continue to draw new members into the fold. He also preached of socialism. He was a self-proclaimed messiah of the People's Temple religious cult. In his preachings, he would tell his people, I want you to enjoy the fuss I have, the courage that I have, the compassion that I have, the love that I have, your all-encompassing mercy that I have. I want you to be what I am and something greater. Jones not only preached about his love, but also against racism. His new and fresh ideas created an aurora of legitimacy and continuity in the people's eyes. Jones even promised his people utopia if they followed him. This utopia was a piece of land in Guyana. Before this town was built in the U.S. in the late 1960s, there was a civil rights movement in the Vietnam War protests, all of which were very violent. During this time, many citizens felt unsafe and many felt like they were being treated unequally. Jones' son, Stephen Jones, explains Jones' approach at this time. A guy like my dad found out what you wanted to see or hear and showed it to you. Whatever you were looking for or whatever you were running from or running toward, Dad had an uncanny ability to hook into it. It's exhilarating and very attractive. Once you got hooked by it, it's really hard to get unhooked. Jones knew that the people were most vulnerable at this time. People wanted something steady and safe. Jones became what the people needed. He began to create a bond with his people. Jones went beyond money and public influence. He was about the emotional ties that forged himself and his people together. He positioned himself as the father of all. This all seemed like a dream come true. Everyone lived in a land where there was peace and unity until things started to go downhill. Jim Jones started being accused of physical and sexual abuse and forced drugging. His own son confirms these rumors. From what I've seen and what was reported was true, and it wasn't good, such as torture, abuse, deceit, theft, fake healing, drugging of people, punishing of children, the drumming up of fear. All of these secrets were slipping, and Jones feared the government would ruin what he would work so hard to achieve. So he started to use abuse and violence even more. Jones' existence laid in the hands of those who perceived him. Jones gained more power and control with the more abuse he used on his people. And just when the people couldn't take it anymore, Jones offered them a small bit of kindness. This leads the people to a deep sense of gratitude and debt toward Jones. Another way Jones kept power was conducting suicide drills at night, which he called White Night. The people would receive a cup with red liquid that they were told to contain poison, which they were ordered to drink. After 45 minutes or so, the members were told that they were not going to die and that they passed a loyalty test. An even more frightening approach, Jones would enforce disciplinary beatings, forcing his people to turn over their property, in some cases custody of their own children. Jones inflicted so many harm in his followers in goals of breaking down their identity to the point where it doesn't even work anymore. He then replaces it with another set of behaviors, attitude, and beliefs that work in the people's current environment. In addition to abusing his people, Jones isolated his people from the outside world. Guyana was surrounded by hundreds of miles of forest, and there was no means of communication with the outside world. There was no phone or television. This place was remote and inaccessible. He controlled their sleeping patterns, eating, using the bathroom, and the basic fulfillment of human needs. Jones did this daily. He also preached over the loudspeakers of Jonestown repeatedly. He had made statements that defined his people and eventually causing his people to break down and doubt their own perceptions of who they are. Researchers of the University of Michigan have come to call this phenomenon memory distortion, and it's basically a brain glitch where the interplay of repetition and assumption makes us form our beliefs around whatever opinion is most familiar to us. Why didn't they leave, you ask? Well, one true reason they stay is a deeply inflicted fear that they cannot make it into the world alone. On top of that, Jones had brainwashed all of his followers to believe that what he preached was right, to the point where they would kill themselves, and not only themselves but their own children. Jim Jones was ultimately able to psychologically alter his people.